Welcome, everybody. My name is Kelvin Henriquez. I am one of the student program coordinators here at El Centro, and this is an El Centro, a small production by those of us here at El Centro, kind of to get to know more about other students and faculty here at Virginia Tech and abroad. Uh, with me today is Ms. Lizette Rebolledo. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Kelby. As Kelby said, my name is Lizette Rebolledo. I serve as Associate Dean of Students and Director for New Student and Family Programs, and I'm excited to be with you all.
Alrighty. So this interview should take about 30 minutes or so, and I'll just be keeping track of time here on my end. After the first question we're going to start off here is, how long have you been here at Virginia Tech?
So I have been here since August 2016. So coming up on, I think, the end of 4 years. And so it's been an exciting time.
Perfect. So what made you want to come down here to Blacksburg and work at Virginia Tech?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, so it looks a lot different here in Blacksburg than back home. And I was previously at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, which is also a large land grant institution. And I was excited to come out here. To be perfectly honest, at first I wasn't that excited when I looked up the institution. I was a little bit skeptical of the area in terms of how rural it was. Again, coming from a big city and an urban campus setting was really going to be different. But as I kept coming to the statistics of the campus and the students that were here, I was seeing that there was a Latino student population. But when I was looking through the website, there was not many Latinx identifying faculty and staff. And so we do have a lot of teaching faculty that identify, but not very many outside of academic affairs. And so I felt like it would be a good way for me to give back to the community and to be a presence. And so I went through the interview process, and I think that what really sealed the deal for me was when I did my Skype interview at the time, there was really awesome colleagues on the call. And then coming to campus, I definitely fell in love with the environment and just the look of campus and the opportunities here. And so my little family and I moved out here in August of 2016, like I said, and it has been a different transition for us. There's a lot of home that we miss, but then there's a lot of great just relationships that we've been able to build over time.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you so much. So going back into the more personal questions, how do you identify yourself? Do you think of yourself as Hispanic, Latino? What else and why? I'm just kind of curious on what's going on.
Sure. So I identify as Latinx, and I think that for me, that is to allow for the inclusivity of those who may not be on the binary. So in our culture, the Latino or the Latina signifies to our pronouns. And so trying to be more inclusive for me, I identify as Latinx. Um, I have not preferred to use the term Hispanic, which is also used in the community as well, simply because my ancestors are from Mexico specifically.
Mm.
And so, not connecting myself to the Spanish, in essence, Spain specifically as a country, for me, Latinx is what I identify with more. Um, and the countries that when we look at the Latin American overall map, I resonate with.
Hmm. I'm glad you made that distinction between the Hispanic and Latinx. I know lots of people seem to get those confused as if they were. I mean, in some cases they are interchangeable. Other times they are very specific to one side. So I'm glad that there's a distinction
Yeah.
there for you.
It definitely includes and excludes, right? So
Hmm.
Hispanic includes those that are coming from Spain specifically, and Latinx doesn't necessarily include that Spain piece. So I think there is that preference.
Hmm. Along with the also, there's a new word I've been hearing around too. Latin. That's another one that I've heard being used in the more in South America as a way to be even more inclusive, such as that Latin X isn't really a word that's very well pronounced in the Spanish language. So that's just another interesting little fact there.
That
But
is
moving
true
on,
because
yeah.
that they've been saying that that's the American version
Hmm.
of adhering to pronouns. So the Latin would be open to. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting to see how all these things kind of come together and where the ideas come from and how they serve the people that they're meant to serve, and then how other times they kind of fail to do that their exact goal.
Hmm.
All right, so moving on to the next question. I know you worked as a assistant director at the new student programs for University of Illinois, as well as a resident director. How has that experience being able to translate over to working here as the tech?
Sure. So I think that there's a lot of transferable skills. I started at the University of Illinois as a residence hall director, and they are larger than we are here. There are over 40,000 students on campus. And in my experiences there, I was able to serve as an advisor to our Latino Student Association as well as to a Black Student Association. And that was really formative for me to be able to engage in the work of my cultural competency, but also educating the majority of students on campus about the different identities of our students and how that shows up in their college experience. I was able to do quite a bit of advising, like I said, of the student organizations, but also taking them to conferences that could uplift their student experience. And that was exciting for me. In my work as an assistant director, I was running a program specifically for our underrepresented and underserved students. So thinking about our first gen, low socioeconomic status, racial and ethnically diverse students, that was an orientation experience for them and their families. And so I really enjoyed being able to do that and to create that experience. And in my role, I was also running our international student orientation experience. And at that campus, we had over 1,500 international students coming every fall semester. So a lot bigger than here at Virginia Tech. And I was able to go to China to do orientation there in a few of their states. And so that was really formative and exciting for me, and just to see a completely different culture. And I think what was most interesting in that experience was I went with other colleagues, and most of them identified as majority white individuals. And for them, it was the first time in their life that they had felt different in a space. And so when obviously when we went to China, there was a significant amount of Asians, if not the predominant group, right? And when we got there, they felt really what I think many of our students feel on campus. So when you're walking through the drill field, you're probably the one person of color on campus that's walking by. Or if you see somebody, you're like, okay, let me give a head nod. There's somebody else out there that looks like me. And for the colleagues at the time, they were having to sit with being the ones that looked completely different in this environment. And it was nice to be able to have conversations with them and connect it back to our students' experience on campus and say, this is what our students feel when they arrive to our campuses. Whether it's the University of Illinois or at Virginia Tech, it's very similar. You feel like there's not anyone that looks like you, and that can be really, really difficult. The other piece was that in doing that work, I also was able to do early move-in programs with our cultural and community centers. And so we were doing early move-in experiences for our cultural and community centers that allowed us to bring them to campus earlier than the rest of the students would arrive and provide continued transitional experiences for them and their family members. And I will say that for me, one of the pieces of this work that continues to be a passion area and one that I want to grow here at Virginia Tech is the ability to work with the families. And so we know that culturally, in the Hispanic and Latinx culture, our family, whether it is our immediate family, our extended family, are a huge part of what contributes to our success to getting us here to campus and to universities, but also what fuels a lot of our drive and desire to be successful on campus. And sometimes our families might not feel like they know how to support us, but they do have skills and they do have ways in which they can do that. So, how is it that my role in the office that I currently work at can continue to promote to the family members that they have a place here, that they have ways in which they can coach and support their student that may not seem traditional to other family members, but are part of the student experience.
Hmm. That's incredible. Yeah, that's something I don't think many people think about as much as like where obviously the students are here, they're here for the experience, the ones that are present, but the families are very connected. Especially as you said, like that's kind of just what it is in the Hispanic Latinx culture, where our family members, they haven't had that experience at all. Like, what do they do and how do they help us out? That's a very important question to ask. And then going back to your colleagues, that must have been some incredible insight to be able to like realize to have that, you know, culture shock in a sense to be able to relate back to how all the students are feeling. So that must have been a wonderful experience. Um, Kind of just goes to show how important study abroad can be. Um,
Yes, definitely, for sure.
Perfect. So in my little bout of research about you, I found that you were a member of the NASPA Latino Knowledge Community Lounge. So I was kind of wondering what does that entail? What's the experience like in that little
Sure.
community?
So, NASPA is the National Association for Student Affairs Professionals, and I was part of the knowledge community for Hispanic Latinx individuals. And so it served as both a space where I could find other identifying individuals that work in the field of student affairs that look like me and have similar experiences. So it definitely was, I think, similar to what El Centro provides to each of you and to all of us. It's a space where you could walk into it. So when we would go to our conference, we'd walk into the space and you're just like, okay, everybody who looks like me is here. And then it was also the space where we could talk to each other about what that experience was outside of that common space. And so it definitely served as a cultural networking and knowledge area. But then we also were talking a lot about what it is that our students that identify with us were going through and how it is that we support them. And I did quite a bit of work with them prior to coming here. Now I do a lot of work with the National Association for Orientation, Transition, and Retention, NOTA, and I serve as their equity and inclusion officer. And in that role, I've taken the things that I was doing with NASPA and all of my passion areas around diversity and inclusion, equity and social justice, and been doing that work and really leading those conversations with that national association. And so, most recently, for our national conference, just about 2 weeks ago, I was part of an anti-racism panel and live Q&A. And so, I think what you'll find as you look at all of the work that I've been doing over, um, you know, the 10 plus years I've been in higher education, specifically in student affairs, I am consistently advocating for the needs and concerns of individuals who have varying identities. How is it that we work towards educating those on diversity and inclusion? How are we creating spaces for equity and social justice to show up in higher education?
Hmm. Wonderful, interesting, interesting. With we kind of what we were talking about with the working in diversity and inclusion and being a diversity ally. I'm kind of curious as to what has been your biggest challenge as a Latinx person here in the New River Valley.
There's not many of us. So I think the biggest challenge is finding community. And I will have to say that Vero is the glue that brings us all together because Veronica Montes, the director of El Centro, who's been here for so long, she is to all of us, and I know she was to me and continues to be the person that I go to. And so she was the person that then connected me to the rest of the community because we're here. It's just hard to find each other because we're in different pockets of the university. So I think that, the building the connections is hard. I think who to speak Spanish with is really, really hard. I miss being able to speak Spanish to people. And so this summer, I was so happy. Kelby, you worked with us in orientation. And one day I was working our virtual help desk, and a mom came on and she asked to speak to somebody in Spanish. And I was so excited to be able to talk to her in Spanish because that is one of the hardest things I will say. I think second to that is the food and the fact that we have a lack of um, what I would call authentic food from all the different cultures that we represent in Latin America and those who are Hispanic. And so that has been really, really difficult. Um, and I love, love, love to cook, and Vero knows this. And so I appreciate that pre-COVID, we would, some of the faculty and staff would gather together to cook meals or to bring plates from our specific countries to share with each other and to build community in that way. But I would have to say, speaking Spanish, the fact that there's not many of us, but there's a significant amount, and the access to food.
Hmm.
So,
I'll definitely agree that that food is one of those like those things that you can just come together with, and that's probably the best way to share a
yes,
person's culture through the food.
yeah. And
Um,
I would say I think the other piece, those are really speaking more personally. I think the other piece on campus that's hard is getting everyone to understand the complexities of the Latinx Hispanic cultures. And so I think that there's an assumption that we are all either from the big countries that people think of. So we're either all Mexican or we're either all South American. Like they don't break it up into the countries of origin. And that has a significant impact to our students' experiences and how they view their culture. I think the other piece is it can seem like the issues of the Latinx community are never larger than the issues of other individuals in underrepresented communities across racial and ethnic backgrounds at institutions. And so our movement has never been or felt like it's as big as other movements, but we are part of those movements and we represent those. And I think that one really big example of that is the recent elections. We
mm,
represented a huge part of the vote that came out, and whichever direction that went, we represented a big part of it. It also showed that, politics and that, are impactful to higher education. They don't think about how different we all are under this big umbrella of Hispanic Latinx individuals.
mhm. I know for many that there are many things that there are crossovers and parallels between each culture, and those things, kind of help out that idea of, people are very similar, and they bond very well over that. But the distinction that each culture, each country itself has, very different history, very different backgrounds. Even with those distinct similarities, it helps to keep in context that, they are, in a sense, they have different names for different reasons. So I think that's a wonderful thing to keep in mind. Um, Going into like talking about the students and whatnot, what was your experience like? What do you miss the most from being a college student yourself?
What do I miss the most? Um, oh, I don't even know if I want to say how long it's been since it's been a while. It's been a long while. I think I miss the ability to do so much on campus with so many different organizations. So I was a part of a cultural fraternity that's co-ed, Alpha Psi Lambda, and that was really awesome for my college experience and being able to connect with individuals from other universities across the country was really awesome. And I'm involved in that still, but it's different when you're in college and you get to go visit people on campus and better understand how their campus culture is. I miss being part of our Latin student organization. And what I miss most about that is, when I think about the organizations that we have here at Virginia Tech, right? Like LASSO and the other organizations under LASSO. I think sometimes it feels like you all just come together to build community with each other, which is a huge piece of it. But you all also have the greatest opportunity to create change on campus and the ability to take the concerns that you're hearing from your peers and from each other and take that to the president's office, take it to student government, take it to Dr. Mena Pratt Clark and say, this is not working and this is what we wish we could see on our campus. And we did quite a bit of that when I was in undergrad, and that advocacy and ability to really be uncensored in your desire for change is awesome. And I miss that part of the undergraduate experience. I think for me, the other piece that I miss is the learning with and about other people. I think that as we get older, we become more isolated from the ability to build friendships in the ways that happen when you're young. So you all can just build connections and friendships with each other in ways that the older you get, the more your inhibitions are not, you kind of are more reserved about it, or you have more concern about, oh, if I talk to this person, you're not as you become more shy, at least in my opinion. And that's something I miss from just feeling like I'm young, I could do whatever I want and go talk to anybody, and what that looks like. And I advise everyone to take advantage of the 4, 5, 6 years that you're on campus, because you will miss it. And take all the naps that you ever wanted. Eat at whatever time you want. You know, procrastinate, but not all the time, because when you go to work, that will look very different. And so think about all of those things.
Hmm. Those are some really great things to think about, honestly. Even the naps, especially. I know I feel a good nap here and there will definitely help me get through the week. But that's a very interesting insight. I know not many people get to really think about what happens after college. You know, what not necessarily the employments and whatnot, but more so the everyday things. Here, I know as an undergraduate, it does feel like you get to meet a new person every day. So that must be a very a big change once you get to the real world, so to speak. Kind of out of curiosity, you were saying that you did a lot of work with creating change in your campus. Do you have any tips or ideas of how students can move forward into creating change?
Yeah, I think that, the biggest piece is to use your voice in productive ways. And what I mean by that, and it's not coded language by any means, is don't lose sight of your story. Your story matters. Your story is important. You can take your story and share that with others. Elevate your friends' stories that they're experiencing. Don't lose sight of the ability to create petitions that are grounded in your experiences, and not to forget that your experiences matter and that your experiences are important. And so if you feel like there's not enough happening in El Centro, and we know that Vero advocates for you all, but if you are like, okay, they're not providing XYZ, or they're not giving us enough of this, write that letter, have your friends and those involved in the different organizations sign it, and ask to meet with the president, ask to meet with Dr. Mena Pratt Clark. They work for you, and that's important. And that's a big difference, right? That changes when you are um, on the administrative side. It looks different for us. And so you all can have that ability. And I know for me, I'm happy to coach you all through that. My partner was part of SGA when he was a student in undergrad when we were together. And we did a lot of work to push things forward through SGA, through talking with, the president, the vice president, meet with Dr. Frank Shushak, share with him what you all think we should be doing for you all, meet with Mena, and don't be afraid to ask for those things.
Perfect, perfect. So basically saying to, use your voice and get out there and just do it. Words from Lizette there. Perfect. Kind of going into the more current events type of thing. We've had the whole COVID pandemic going on for the last couple months, people being inside and quarantining and all that. It does, have an impact on your mental health. So my next question is to you, what is making you happy during this pandemic? What is making you, keep your sanity and keeping some sort of normalcy?
Yeah. I think that it is hard. It is hard culturally, because we are used to being in community and meeting with people and gathering, and that is really, really difficult. As I said, we are away from family. We're about 11 hours away, and in the pandemic, we've not been able to engage in the ways that we typically would. I think what has kept my sanity is thinking about the ways in which the pandemic has allowed us to connect and to close the gap, right? And so I think about all of the technology that does allow us to stay connected, and how it is that we can leverage that. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, I started doing and hosting Zoom family game nights with my family that lives across all different states and places. We started to do Zoom calls more readily to stay connected. I think that, some of the things I've enjoyed is the time I have at home to try new recipes, to cook new things. And that for me is important, and something that keeps me in my mental health study. I think it's important to know when to also disconnect from those things. So, how is it that you're not just stuck to the screen at all times? How do you get outside and enjoy the weather when we can? How is it that we make intentional time for ourselves in that? I think it's thinking about ways that maybe we forgot about staying connected with individuals. So if it's writing a letter, actually sending each other care packages, thinking about ways in which we do that is important. I'm not a physical person, so if someone says go on a hike, that's going to get your mental health ready. That's not for Lizette, and I am very aware of that. But that might be for some people. But I think that's the other piece is figuring out what works for you. For me, it's going to look like finding a new recipe, trying to find all the ingredients for it, and making it in my house and enjoying it with my family. That's going to de-stress me. I've also intentionally set aside Sunday for me where I don't check work email. I'm not looking at my work computer. I try not to think about it to be fully focused on getting myself prepared for the week ahead. And so thinking about what are the triggers, what are the things that really concern you or get your your blood pressure raised or whatever, and how can I put a pause on those for a little bit to help you navigate things, and what gives you energy? Is that being with people, not being with people, and how do you find that in the pandemic? And knowing that there are campus resources for it, and that's important as well.
I think the most valuable thing you said there is triggers and trying to figure those out. I think lots of students can gain a lot of help from that, just those few words, figuring out, what is it that causes this emotion, and then how do I, take a pause, as you said. That's great. I think lots of students will resonate with that. As you mentioned earlier, I know you said that you like cooking, and as well as that food and whatnot is a big part of the culture. So I do ask, what is your favorite food?
My favorite food is pozole, which is a Mexican stew, and it's coming upon the season where I like it the best. So it has pork and hominy, and it's in a red sauce, and it's one of my favorite things. Um, and then the second would have to be tamales.
Mm,
So Mexican tamales are my thing, and I'm specific because I think throughout all of Hispanic and Latinx culture, there's a version of tamales, but I really do enjoy Mexican tamales.
I'm with you on that one. Tamales are always the best part, especially now that it's coming down to Thanksgiving and Christmas time. All these wonderful dishes that you don't get to have throughout the years are coming down and makes things a lot more exciting. So I'm really glad you mentioned tamales there because it really just brings back some memories. Um, Kind of going on to the same, more about you specifically, personally. What kind of music do you listen to, if you do at all?
Yeah, I think that my musical taste was shaped by my parents' generation. And so I listened to a lot of Spanish music from the 60s and 70s. And so Camilo Sesto and a few others in there. I think things that the students would probably know is I do enjoy a lot of bachata. That is something that I like listening to significantly. Um, and when I was in college, reggaeton was coming up, and that was a big deal. So just because we have some new artists right now, know that back in the day, we also were listening to reggaeton. And so I do enjoy that. Um, and I think on a Saturday morning, if I'm starting to clean, I'm thinking of cumbias and reggaeton and bachata to get the house ready.
Absolutely. I think many people can relate to that. Every weekend is always a good time for reggaeton and bachata. Alrighty. So just last question here before we wrap up. Just want to be respectful of everyone's time here. One of your skills mentioned earlier was public speaking, and I would figure that with many students being here on Zoom and having these different presentations and group projects and whatnot, that public speaking is gonna be a little different. It's gonna be a little weird for them, given that they're in their space. The camera provides a window to their personal space and might give them a little run for their nerves. So, on the subject of public speaking, are you have any tips for students to get used to being on stage and being able to just have their voice heard?
I think that it is important to have some talking points written out, at least bullet points that can you, especially on the Zoom world, you can glaze at and recenter yourself.
Hmm.
I think that knowing if it bothers you to see yourself, and taking off the speaker view so you don't see yourself in the Zoom world. So it doesn't give you that anxiety of constantly looking at yourself and your mannerisms. And that can be hard for people to have to see how it is that they're showing up in the space. I would say to practice before you do anything. A few little run throughs would never hurt you. Making sure that you run it by someone. The mirror is not something I enjoy doing. People like doing that. I rather say a few things to somebody else to have them tell me what they heard or how they felt about what I was saying. And I think that again, just thinking about yourself and how it is that you would want to hear it versus focusing on what you think other people want to hear.
I really like that last bit, being hearing it as how you want to hear it versus how others hear it. I think that's something that I'm definitely gonna have to keep to heart moving forward, especially with these little interviews and whatnot. But it is 1 o'clock. So thank you so much, Lizette, for joining us here in El Centro. I want to thank everyone else at the audience as well for joining us and listening in on this quick little conversation.
Thank you.